Welcome to the first ever virtual TAF Varsity Luncheon, Journey to Justice. I'm Trish Millines Dziko, co-founder and executive director of TAF. Although we are not able to convene in person, we are so excited to bring our program safely to you and share the incredible work our students and community are doing. First, I'd like to acknowledge some key partners who help make our work possible. A special thanks to the individuals who help rally guests to attend our luncheon, our table captains, now termed virtual table hosts, and TAF Board of Directors. I'd also like to thank our school partners, Federal Way Public Schools, Tacoma Public Schools, Highline Public Schools, and Seattle Public Schools. In addition, I would like to thank our university partners, Seattle University, University of Washington, Seattle, University of Washington, Bothell, Pacific Lutheran University, Seattle Pacific University, Western Washington University, Central Washington University, Evergreen State College, and Heritage University. And lastly, we'd like to thank our event sponsors, Alaska Airlines, Facebook, WSP, Zillow, a premier sponsor who has been an incredible support to our students and teachers over the years. And finally, Amazon, our premier sponsor who graciously offered to host this year's luncheon and whose team, with the direction of Latasha Gillespie, worked tirelessly to help us design our event and has continued to support us even now that we have moved our luncheon online. Today's program will feature the importance of creating academic environments where students feel seen, valued, and validated. It will showcase the innovative ideas students produce when given the opportunity to become leaders in their community, and how our journey toward educational justice will impact thousands of students in public schools across Washington State. I hope you are inspired.
Hello everyone, my name is Kwan, and I'm a software engineer at Zillow working on the social impact team. I'm also a TAF board member, but more importantly, a TAF alum. Some context of who I am and what my family story is. My parents immigrated from China just before I was born. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My parents have always worked blue-collar jobs, and for as long as I can remember, we grew up low income on free and reduced lunch. And so, for someone that is coming from that background, your trajectory for success isn't necessarily all that bright. As a person of color, as a son of immigrants, there are a lot of things that are already stacked up against us. When I started thinking about what it would look like for me to go to college and what I would want to study, I knew I wanted to do something with tech. I knew I wanted to do something that would also benefit my community. One of my friends introduced me to the Technology Access Foundation. When I joined the TAF family, I joined through the Technical Teens Internship Program. And at that time, all that I knew was that it was going to give me some after-school training in technical skills, so networking and programming. What I didn't understand or realize was that they were preparing us for much, much more. TAF taught us something much more important. They taught us how to advocate for ourselves and how to see ourselves in our communities and also in our workplaces. Those skills and that exposure that they gave us during those 4 years that I was in TTIP and the first 4 years that I was involved with TAF have been essential to how I've been able to navigate my own career from the time that I graduated high school to the present day where I'm a senior software engineer now. One of the coolest things for me now is that I've been able to reflect back on a lot of that. And as I sit on the board now for TAF, I get to see how a lot of the work that TAF is doing now is stemmed from those early days. My brother and sister both were not a part of any of the TAF programs, but they were a part of the TAF family. They not only benefit from my early exposure to how to figure out how to get into college, they also learned through the things that I learned, how to find money to pay for college, how to explore majors, and also how to network and figure out how to advocate for themselves. Given where I am today, I know for a fact that my life would have been much, much different had I not been involved with TAF. TAF did so much to expose me to what life could look like. from the college campus visits where I got to see myself as a college student to the internships that I had during high school. All of that culminated into what a successful career would look like in tech. But for me, it also meant that it gave me the confidence to see myself doing that type of work and also seeing myself in those spaces. TAF taught us that wherever we wanted to be, whatever we wanted to pursue, we deserve to be there. Given today's society and given the pressures that people of color face in professional work environments, it gave us the skills to navigate a mostly white male corporate professional work culture. And for a person of color, that's something that's really hard to navigate because that's a lot of experiences that aren't necessarily shared. One of the most powerful things about all that exposure is watching Trish and Sherry be role models for us and teaching us what it looks like for us to have a seat at the table. I joined the board a little over a year ago because I wanted to capitalize on the experiences that I've had as an alumni, as well as bring in the experiences that other alumni have had to ensure that other students have the same level of access, but also can go further than where we've gone. To continue the work that we're doing, we have to make sure that our programs have the support of the community. As a TAF board member, an alumni, and a community member, it's more important than ever to be a part of this work. These students that are going through the programs now are super bright, but they're coming from backgrounds that have historically been marginalized. They're coming from backgrounds where the education system has traditionally not given them the access that I was able to get. The programming that TAF does today addresses a lot of the issues that marginalized communities of color often face when it comes to getting access to a quality education. Given the success that me and my peers have had, I truly believe that these students are set up for greater success. $360 a year can cover 1 year of STEM education for one student. When you think about the impact that a year of education has for a student and what it could translate to their success as an adult, $360 is pretty nominal. Your support and your investment in TAF ensures that students like me and students who are to come have the opportunities that I've had and more. And your investment today also means that the work that TAF is doing to change education so that every kid has access to a quality and equitable education without having to spend thousands of dollars in tuition can become a reality. Please give today.
In 2008, TAF started TAF Academy, the only public school co-managed by a nonprofit in Washington state, serving diverse students and their community. There, the STEMbyTAF model was developed and perfected, offering a new way for students to learn without limits. The success of the school, demonstrated through student growth and academic achievement, opened a new opportunity for TAF. Then in 2017, TAF Academy became TAF at Saghalie. At TAF at Saghalie, 88% of over 600 students identify as a person of color. While the Washington State high school graduation rate is at a low 73%, at TAF at Saghalie, 95% of students graduate on time. TAF at Saghalie provides students a school environment with rigorous and relevant opportunities rooted in redefined STEM education, focusing on student relationships, community, and innovation. The school encapsulates our model, providing all students the access and opportunity to succeed. This is TAF at Saghalie.
Hello, my name is Peyton Washington. I'm a 10th grade here at TAF Saghalie, and here's how I use coding and art to make learning ASL easier, more fun, inexpensive, and accessible for everyone. There we go. So, ASL, or American Sign Language, is a series of hand gestures, body movements, and facial expressions to communicate between people. Most people don't know that it greatly affects a person in their early years, especially if they are born deaf or with a disability, speech disability. I decided to create this project where I could translate ASL, or American Sign Language, to spoken language. The importance of this topic is that, like I said earlier, people use it to communicate and is a primary form of communication for a lot of people. It is important, especially when they're growing up as a social aspect of life, to learn this type of communication, especially if it's their primary source. So I wanted to create an efficient way for everyone to be able to learn ASL and for it to be accessible to everyone. So from that, my direct question is, how can I use coding to translate ASL to spoken language? So some of the research that I found during my project was an SIPP analysis survey, which basically told me how to correctly classify certain categories of disabilities. For example, instead of putting just being mute, having a speech impairment, and being deaf onto one category, it separates them out into those separate categories. The next piece of evidence I had was the thesis from the University of Ottawa, and this gave me insight on the different types of hand recognition programs that I could use, such as gloves that had sensors on them, or using 3D geometrical recognition for my project. The next piece of evidence that I had was an NIDCB agency survey and analysis and statistics, and this basically told me what specifically affected a person in their early years, especially if they had a disability, and it elaborated on people who had hearing impairments. And the last source I had was Udemy, which initially at the beginning of my project, I didn't have any knowledge of coding or any knowledge of ASL in general. So Udemy gave me a foundation for that and really helped me learn how to use code. Some of the findings I had, which I stated earlier from the SIPP survey, was statistics on how many people, specifically students, had hearing impairments. The University of Ottawa thesis gave me different options that I could use for my project, and the NIDCD's survey gave me more statistics that I needed for my project to really elaborate and make a specific point that I needed. So from that, what I found was that over 9,000 children in the U.S. under the age of 18 are deaf, and that means that 3 out of 1,000 children in the U.S. are deaf or have or are part of other subcategories such as speech problems or being mute. And 90% of those children actually have hearing parents, which means that they need some form of knowledge separate from their parents and separate from their home life to teach them ASL, American Sign Language, to move forward in their social life and their academic life. I needed to find a way to be able to make ASL accessible for all types of people and not just those who are affected by it. In the first phase, it was more research and ideation and making sure that I had a solid plan that I wanted to go on with. The second phase was actually making the prototype and collecting data that I needed for my project. And the third phase was analyzing that data and presenting my project. Some of the criteria and constraints I had for this was creating a functional code or creating a functional device from code. And this was a big part because that's the main part of my project was the actual code and the programs I use and the language that I use. And some of the constraints I had was just that, the code, because I had no personal experience with it beforehand and no experience in computer science. And so that was a big part of my project, a big part of my learning and growing is to be able to adapt to these limitations I had. Some of the programs I used were OpenCV and Anaconda, And the language I used was Python, the coding language that I used was Python. My initial prototype was actually this one. This is just a stand-in and illustration made by Ryan Patterson. And this project was actually done a few years back. But this is not ideal at all because it's invasive. There's lots of wires around you and you can't really move around with the glove actually on you. And it wasn't that efficient or effective anyway. It didn't go with the plan of being accessible and easy to access and overall inexpensive because this way of recognizing gestures was very expensive. The last one it was already invented, it was original, and that's what led me away from this initial prototype. So the first thing I did was go to GitHub, which was one of my sources, and open source, which is basically using bits and fragments of other people's code and implement it into mine, and then write the rest from there. And really Frankensteined it together with my own to be able to create this product. Some of the programs I used from this open sourcing was obviously as code. As I mentioned earlier, OpenCV and Anaconda. And these were the two main programs I use because it is essential for my project to actually work to use OpenCV. And the language I use is Python instead of JavaScript because I am new and Python is one of the easier languages. So the present limitations that I have, which is basically what went wrong with the program, what were the errors, was that it was laggy and picky, and it didn't really go up to my expectations. It needed clear angles in between the fingers, so as I said before, you can't do this if you want to do 5. You have to spread your fingers like this so it can recognize the specific angles in between the fingers for the key. I also want to create either an app or a program that people can use this actually to create their own gestures that they wanted to add on to it and to be able to really make this into a solid product for people to use to learn and gain knowledge on ASL or American Sign Language and how it affects a person. I think it directly addresses it in all because it actually does use coding like I needed to do in my criteria to translate ASL to spoken language, which it did, except it didn't translate to spoken language, instead it translated to written language, as you'll see later down. And this, even though it did not achieve the goal I wanted to, I feel like in later circumstances, I would be able to somehow translate the written language to spoken language. That's it.
After years in this work, we realized a classroom for students of color required having a figure they can look up to, a classroom leader who looks like them, and in turn validates their identity and potential. Research has shown that teachers of color in the classroom can boost academic performance and feelings of support for students of color. In Washington State, only 11% of public school educators identify as a person of color. Only 11%, in contrast to 47% of Washington State students. TAF's Martinez Fellowship Program recruits and retains diverse educators to public schools in Washington State. To date, there are over 180 fellow educators representing 10 counties and over 35 school districts across the state. Fellows receive early career coaching, professional development, and a community of support from educators who share similar experiences. They are empowered to not only be a role model for their students, but to develop as leaders within their districts too. This is the TAF Martinez Fellowship Program.
My name is Jennifer Estrada, and I teach first grade at Hilltop Elementary, and I am a dual language Spanish teacher. Buenos días, Verónica. Vamos, vamos. Come on. Entre. Buenos días, Eva. Buenos días, Shay. Each teacher at Hilltop, we have our own community, and we pick an animal. And so I always say, buenos días, gatitos, so the kids know like we are the gatitos community. And in this community, we take care of each other. If one person doesn't succeed, then that means we don't all succeed. We need to all succeed together.
I am a gatito and I'm in Master Jenny's class. She's my favorite Spanish teacher, and I'm gonna miss her when I go to second grade.
Education has always been a passion of mine. It brings life into me. When I realized I was ready to become a teacher and I applied to Seattle University, I was looking at all these scholarships, and the Martinez Fellowship just seemed the right scholarship to apply for because they specifically focus on educators of color. And for me, that was very important to see representation because growing up, I didn't see any representation in my life at all. And if you don't see representation within yourself in the school, there's a part of you that feels like you're never going to achieve your goals.
Being in Maestra Jenny's class is really fun because we can read in Spanish and we can chill in the calm corner for a little bit for like 3 minutes or 2, and yeah.
The Martinez Fellowship has given me such an amazing opportunity to be here and to continue with my education. I just felt like for the first time in my life, the doors were opening, and getting that acceptance letter showed me that I am worthy, I am valuable. Here's this organization that's giving me a chance because they believe in me. Like, I can't believe it's actually happening, but it is. Yeah. So Hilltop, we are a multicultural, multilingual community school. The majority of our students are Latinx students. A lot of my students, even though they're in first grade, they've either experienced or have seen some type of discrimination and prejudice either against them or their family members. And that's heartbreaking to me. And so that's why I always try to keep that dialogue open of identity. Anything that I show, I want to have representation because I want all of my students to feel that they are seen and they are heard and that they are valued. I always try to connect with my kids, and I try to be the kind of teacher that I would have wanted to had while growing up. I want them to see that I am a teacher of color who cares about them, and we are working together so that way all of us can succeed.
Providing students with access and opportunity is central to TAF's mission. Access to STEM education solely within our school wasn't enough. We knew that in order to reach the communities that needed our help the most, we needed to expand our reach. Partnering with existing public schools and districts allows us to reach the students who are furthest from educational justice and to impact K-12 education on a larger scale. Through STEMbyTAF school transformation, schools across Washington state can utilize our model to allow thousands more students to learn through a program that promotes equity and redefines STEM education. Transformation schools promote student exploration of personal, communal, and cultural roles in their life. Students learn, create, teach, inspire, and lead, all with the dedicated support of STEMbyTAF transformation coaches and trained school staff. Last year, we added 3 new schools to our transformation portfolio: Roosevelt Elementary of Tacoma, Olympic View Elementary, and Brigadoon Elementary of Federal Way. In their first year, 5th grade students at Brigadoon Elementary are learning about human rights and being empowered to lead within their communities. This is STEMbyTAF School Transformation.
Hi, my name is Maribel Valdez Gonzàlez, and I'm a STEMbyTAF transformation coach. And I work with 5th grade teachers at both Brigadoon Elementary and Olympic View Elementary for Federal Way Public Schools. I started working for Technology Access Foundation in August of 2019 because I was extremely excited about working in partnership with K-12 administrators and teachers in order to transform education to one that centers all students and their lived experiences. So what I do for TAF is I work to transform traditional educational models to one that is STEM-centered, one that is project-based learning, because that is our solution to addressing the racial disparities. This drives my work because of my own experiences in K-12 as a daughter of Mexican immigrants, as a first-generation student in K-12 schools. And I graduated from high school completely insecure and had a very distorted image of my self-worth. I wasn't confident, and I struggled with college. I didn't have study skills. And I only applied to one university because I didn't think that career path or that educational pathway was designed for me. And as I started to think about what I wanted to do with my life, I realized that I needed to be the person or the educator that I needed when I was in K-12, when I was in elementary, middle, and high school and experiencing racialized microaggressions and bullying that wasn't addressed by my educators or by my teachers and administrators. So every single day I strive to be the adult, the leader, the educator that children like me need in order to create effective social change that's going to permeate our society as a whole. Prior to working with TAF, I served as the educational consultant for the We the Future Amplifier Art campaign, where I collaborated with artists, community organizations to create artwork and teaching tools that were then shared with over 20,000 classrooms across the United States. As a result of collaborating and working with this campaign, I really saw the effects of students talking about issues that matter to them, that they experience and are impacted by in their communities.
Okay, so our article is about freedom. All humans deserve to be innocent before proven guilty.
Okay, what do you think about that?
I think that is true because you can't just blame someone just to blame them. You have to have like a reason or evidence that before you can make them guilty. It wouldn't be fair for the people that can't learn because they wouldn't know, they wouldn't be able to get a job or learn, like go to college or get food, pay for something. They'd probably be homeless.
What did you like about doing your project?
Writing mostly.
You like the writing?
I love writing, and then we got to type, which was super fun.
Typing?
Yeah, on a computer, and then our teacher printed it out.
So I was working with fifth grade teachers during our STEMbyTAF Teacher Institute, and we were designing this project and collaborating on ideas. And they decided that they were going to create a museum exhibit around human rights, specifically around the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. And one of the products, or one of the explorations of the driving question, which is what do human rights mean to me, was that students were going to create their own self-portrait, which would be their own interpretation of a human rights that's in the UDHR. We launched the project by going to Tacoma Art Museum so that students could have a visual experience. They could have storytelling opportunities around some of the artworks that were displayed at Tacoma Art Museum. They saw the impact of what art can do to shift culture in a way that really honors and uplifts our rights as communities. I work with teachers to help them design projects that will center the students' voices, that will nurture collaborative working environments. And so this project, which culminated in Brigadoon Arts Museum, or BAM, was all the work of Mr. Sayers and Ms. Santoyos and their students. Brigadoon Arts Museum left an impact on the broader school community. For weeks after this exhibit was showcased, students from all grade levels asked their teachers if they were going to be participating in this project when they approached fifth grade. And it created a broader sense of community because it allowed the opportunity for fifth graders to do the teaching for kinder, first, second, third, and fourth graders. It's really important that we partner with K-12 public schools because our STEMbyTAF educational framework really addresses the racial disparities that schools across Washington state and beyond are experiencing. Our STEMbyTAF educational framework is educational justice because it provides educational pathways for every kind of learner, regardless of racial backgrounds and socioeconomic status.
We have come a long way from after-school programs to co-managing schools with districts and increasing the number of teachers of color in partnership with universities. It just seems like it was a short time ago that we were in my kitchen making sandwiches and then in the labs making Hot Pockets, so when the kids came after school, they had something to eat before they sat down and started doing their work. Today, TAF partners with public education to create access to transformative systems of learning for students and teachers of color. We saw a different need and we dared to believe public school leaders would welcome partners to improve and elevate the entire public school system. We had this idea how together we can build schools that redefine STEM literacy, equitable education, and what it means to be a well-educated 21st century students. Schools that are known for encouraging innovation, for pushing the limits of what's expected. Schools that deliver curriculum in a way that is relevant to real-world needs and goals of students. Schools that have learning designed for and often by the students, that have professionals in other fields participate in teaching and learning, and have a very diverse teaching staff. We built that school in 2008 with Federal Way Public Schools. From breaking ground to bring in the portable classrooms to the 8th graduating class, there is so much to be excited about. But the thing that I will always remember is that every single year, kids would run across the parking lot to get into class, almost getting hit, because they were so excited about what they were going to learn. And we would hear from parents every day about how their kids would come back and talk about what they did for the day and how they couldn't wait to get back. That's the kind of schools that we want to continue to create. Today, Tacoma, Seattle, and Highline are our partners too in creating great schools with a diverse teaching staff. In 2015, we proudly took stewardship of the Martinez Fellowship to bring more teachers of color into our state and retain them so students of color would have teachers who they can relate to and see as mentors. Our university partners are important in this work to create pathways for teaching and leadership. One of the things that I will always remember is how I listened to teachers of color talking about the lives that they changed in the classroom, but more importantly, how they stayed in the classroom because of the support that they had for each other. We have educated 20,000 students, and we know our work creates generational change. Our first students are in their 30s and early 40s, which makes me feel really, really old right now. But they are leading middle-class lives and giving back to the community. They continue to educate their own families, their siblings, their cousins, using the tools that they got from being with TAF. We are so excited about our plans for the next 5 years. And being TAF, they are ambitious. We plan to educate 68,000 more students, add 400 more teachers of color to Washington State Public Schools, and add 15 more school partners. This is ambitious, but we can do it with your support. Our students are already at a disadvantage. Now they're not in school. So when they come back, we need to really be ready to make sure that we can get them back on track and that we can move them forward in their education. So I'm asking you to make a donation today so that we can be prepared for our students. And these are all our students. Thank you so much for joining us today. I would like to leave you with one of my favorite poems of James Baldwin. For these are all our children. We will profit by or pay for whatever they become. Thank you.